these quick draws. It's already a draw, Eric. Easy. He's been playing some amazing fighting chess, but I guess sometimes with the black pieces, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, normally the onus is on white to actually create a game, to create some kind of battle, and it does look like Wesley, he went into a very forcing line. And,
oh, we don't have the b3.
No b3 in this one. Magnus just opening with his queen's pawn instead, so more classical start to this game. But I just want to say, great result for Arigasi, and actually that maybe helps secure his places in that top 8. Okay, meanwhile, we do see the King's Indian defence, which we have seen from Adhiban in the tournament a couple of times. White allowed to occupy the centre with pawns, but Black has castled first. Black now challenging, striking out in the centre to try and challenge White's very strong pawns there, those 3 pawns for White. And now White finally does get castled as well. And yesterday... 2 days ago, against Vidit, Adhiban here developed the Black Knight, the one that's still sitting at home on that queen side on the left side. He brought it out towards the centre. He does it again. He's
something he studied then. Something
he studied, and actually he had a great position against Vidit earlier in the tournament. Still following that game, Black now challenging White on that left side, and wow, Magnus Carlsen plays a very rare move in this position, pushing his pawn forward 1 square. Usually, we see pawn takes pawn. White wants to open up that left side of the board. That's where White's play normally takes place. But Magnus saying, no, I don't care. You can block it up if you want. And Adhiban, he looks surprised. He looks confused by Magnus's choice. I'm confused too. Traditionally, you just always want to open up that side with White. That's where your ambitions lie. But Magnus not going for the move that Vidit chose, not going for the traditional move there.
Very rare move, David. It doesn't have a particularly strong pedigree. I can't even see a ground... Ooh. For a second, I thought there was I had played a game. I was like, no. It's my namesake.
Not your brother? Or?
No. Okay. There's another Jay Houska who plays chess. And sometimes he takes me by surprise. And, but there have been no Grandmaster games in the database.
OK, I wonder, was that a mouse slip, Jovanka? Was Magnus coming up with something new? OK, he did think for a little while, a few seconds there, which surprised me, because if you play a strange move like that, if you look at the left side of the board, it's completely blocked up now. White cannot advance a pawn without losing a pawn. Black cannot advance either, so it's all going to take place on one side of the board now. Everything's going to shift over to that right side. So Adhiban tucking the Black King away for now. We've seen him use this manoeuvre before. Magnus, he loves his rook lifts. I commentated with him a while ago, and every time he was suggesting this idea, White bringing the rook up, later trying to swing it all the way across the board. So it's a real clash of ideas right now, and it's yet to be seen who this will favour. Very blocked, all the pawns, all the pieces still on the board. It's kind of a rich, fertile ground for creativity right now. Adhiban retreating his knight, heading over to a nice outpost, maybe. Also, unblocking a pawn. If you look at the F line, Black is threatening to just throw a pawn up the board there to challenge White's centre. What do you think, Jovanka?
We saw Vidit do, not in terms of the pawns, but in terms of the pieces, we saw him employ a similar kind of piece formation.
Very similar.
Yeah, exactly. And with that rook lifting up. But Vidit actually never managed to find a single purpose point for the rook to be there on the 3rd row. And... I'm curious as to see what Magnus has got up his sleeve, because it does look a little bit disjointed. You know, he's conceded a big square for the Black Knight to jump into. And what is his plan against the standard King's Indian attack, which would be pushing that pawn open and to challenge the white pawn in the middle of the board?
I don't see what Magnus's plan will be here, because traditionally Black is the one who plays on the right side of the board. White has no active plans on that flank. So Magnus is just kind of playing the waiting game. Adhiban for now as well, just manoeuvring his pieces around. And actually, if we bring up the analysis board at this moment, just to explain a couple of plans, it's easier to show rather than tell here. So Adhiban's last move, bringing the knight back. The reasons are twofold. Firstly, he wants to maybe bring the knight towards the centre later on. But also, if you compare bishops right now, this bishop is blocked in behind its own pawn. It's not a great piece. This bishop controls a lot of squares. So Black wants to actually trade off these bishops. If White just does nothing here, if White just makes a move, then Black will consider offering this trade of bishops. And if these bishops leave the board, White is left with only one bad bishop locked in behind all of the white pawns. Look at White's pawn structure. This bishop has no future. So Adhiban going for an advantageous trade there. And also, Jovanka, you mentioned this one, which is imminent. black is about to push a pawn. Black is the one who has all the fun once that starts. And, I mean, imagine if... OK, again, if white makes a move, imagine if the black knight lands on this square. Like, I mean, oh, what a knight that is. Like, that is just a phenomenal piece. Can never be dislodged by a white pawn. It's just, I mean, this looks fantastic for black.
I agree. White's play doesn't really seem to make too much sense. That's why I'm really curious to know what he's got cooking in his kitchen, because, I mean, what is there? I mean...
This isn't a Magnus type of position as well.
No.
He likes to have a plan that he can slowly execute, that he can improve all of his pieces. But here, how do you improve your pieces for white? It's not clear where they want to be.
Right, and he's done things that I would consider quite natural. You know, I mean, one of the things, I don't necessarily like that rook being in the centre of the board, because I would much rather prefer that square to be free for my knight to come in, because I get very, very scared when I see black's avalanche of pawns there on the right, then when they start to move, because, hey, that is like the scariest thing you can ever see on a chessboard.
Yeah.
And so I like to meet that with direct conflict. You know, if you're going to advance pawns, I'm also going to advance pawns, and we have a big opening. But, you know, that rook has moved to a square where I would like my knight to be, and now he's put he's put his bishop now on the third row. That's a rook and knight, a bishop, and another knight there. And OK, Adhiban, using your plan of exchanging the dark squared bishop. The dark square bishop is traditionally black's worst placed piece. And I like this plan. I kind of, I haven't christened it, but it's known as the Petrosian plan, because it was used by former world champion Tigran Petrosian. And Magnus...
Running away from that trade.
Running away from that trade.
Yeah, so all the pieces still remain on the board, all the pawns as well. But to me, it still feels as if black is the one who he has the button to press. He's going to say, OK, now I'm going to initiate the play. Now I'm going to initiate the chaos. If black wants, he can actually just sit still and maneuver. Because, again, look at the centre, look at that left side. It's completely locked down. White has no play on that side of the board. And now Adhiban, he's just... he's teasing Magnus. He's saying, OK, you ran away from the trade. I'm just going to retreat now. Note how white's bishop was actually on the same diagonal as black's king. So if things opened up, then maybe that bishop would have been a real nuisance. So black's bishop stepping back to neutralise that. And, yeah, Magnus, I mean, what's he going to come up with here? If white can never really push pawns on the right side, I mean, that's just not a feasible plan. And if you can't push pawns, you can't open lines, then your pieces are all a bit stuck. So now I expect to see Adhiban start to... I was going to say slowly manoeuvre and unravel.
I was going to say the same. I was expecting the knight to jump forward to his perfect square and then threaten the pawn forward. But OK, direct play. Yeah,
and we do see the first trade of pawns so far in the game. I don't like that from Adhiban. I don't think there was any rush. In a block position, time is not essential. You can just slowly improve your pieces. What was White's plan? White had no plan. And Adhiban has given Magnus a clear plan now by opening up the position and offering that trade. And Magnus, with his last knight retreat, firstly, he wants to bring the knight over to maybe protect the white king. Secondly, look at the white rook on that left side now. It's going to swing the whole way across later on. And committal decisions by Adhiban.
Yeah, totally. Because I remember he played a little bit more the waiting game when Adhiban was facing Vidit. You know, there we saw that Vidit didn't quite know what to do because Adhiban was waiting with his pawn push, waiting until Vidit played a wrong move, and suddenly it became much more attractive to push the pawn. I suspect that was the best.
Yeah.
Here, I just think it's too much excitement.
Yeah.
And...
I mean, too much haste as well. Look at the clock. Adhiban has more time than he started with, and he's already made some huge committal decisions. And Magnus, a moment ago, was frowning quite seriously. He was surprised as well by Adhiban's kind of rush to initiate this play. And, OK, black's got a very nice pawn structure. I know you like your pawn structures, Kaya.
Yeah,
look at all of black's pawns on dark squares.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
He's playing Connect 4 with his last move on this diagonal. But Magnus, he's trying to break up those pawns.
Yeah.
And Magnus... That move is a bit risky. I think it's quite a strong one in this exact position because black's pieces aren't ready to attack right now, but it is a bit risky to open up the white king like this. I think it's just urgent. You need to just destabilise the black pawns. You need to crack open that centre if you can for white as quickly as possible while black's not ready.
Yeah. some inventive opening play by Magnus. And talking about invention, we do have a quiz where we are asking what is the best invention ever and why. And David, 271006, says chess, because you can have really much fun.
Yeah.
And that was David from Instagram. And Jason Liu says the internet would not know how to live without it. And Sal Lithuanian says, I think computer and paper are the best inventions because it has transformed how the world works. We can transmit and store information and knowledge, which helped us as civilization to grow.
Oh.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The paper, that was, I didn't even think about that, but of course, yeah.
For me, I think one of the best inventions is flight. You know, the plane, being able to take a plane, because suddenly the concept of time just changed. Because before, you know, if we wanted to travel to America, that would be like 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, right. On a boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully you would make it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have seen a capture from Adhiban. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, opening up the black rook on this open line now. And Magnus, he has a big choice. Which way do you recapture? You can recapture that pawn, that black pawn, in 3 different ways for white. You can capture with your own pawn, either towards the centre or away from the centre, but you can also capture with a knight. And, OK, Magnus captures with a pawn. Capturing with the knight would have been maybe the more kind of... For players who like to be dynamic with pieces, that would have been the more tempting option. But this one is more strategic. He's just keeping his pawns nice and connected. And finally, Adhiban installs his knight on this fantastic outpost. He should have done this, I feel, 4 or 5 moves ago, though.
Yeah.
So timing, again, it's a great move, but it's a little bit too late.
Yes. And, I mean, if you look at all of the other black pieces, that knight is fantastic, but all of the other ones, they're kind of asleep at home. And white's pieces, especially the 2 white bishops, now that things have opened up, those 2 white bishops are much happier than they were previously. So, still feels like Adhiban maybe not so accurate with his last few moves, but this last one, looking good. And now Magnus will try to somehow activate the white pieces even further, maybe bring some knights forward. The black king, just as much of a target as the white king. One move or one idea that I would be tempted by, I don't know about you, Jovanka, would be to actually just shift up the white king 1 square here.
That has already been on my radar. I was like, oh, look at that. Look at that. There's an open line that's in front of the king and my rook wants to be there. So that definitely was on my radar.
So this move, it looks like it's just protecting a few things, but actually the secret idea is this one, as you mentioned.
Yeah. So no, I definitely like that idea as a possibility. And another idea that I was thinking about was a way to jump forward with the knights. Because what I really would love a knight to be
jump
there.
Here?
Yeah, just anywhere. I want them to move forward.
Yeah. I guess this knight is the problem right now. It's kind of controlled by this pawn. It can't really jump to anywhere great. So you could definitely consider knight here. Later, kind of hinting that you might jump in and sacrifice and open up the black king position. But, yeah, I think it's just somehow it's Magnus's style. Harmony is his style, and just to use every single piece. This piece is not playing right now, so how do you improve it? It wants an open line. Just create a path for it to get to that open line. And suddenly, yeah, I think the black king is going to be under huge pressure if Magnus finds this move.
Yeah. And the fact that it kind of was the first move that I thought about and the first move that you also considered means that it's a very natural idea.
It's definitely on Magnus's radar. Maybe he's looking for something better, or maybe something slightly safer. The white king doesn't feel entirely comfortable if you step it forward. So, yeah, Magnus investing a bit of time. He does play that move, though, as we mentioned, the most natural move. You want to keep everything controlled. You want to bring your rook across. I think it was former world champion Vladimir Kramnik who said, when in doubt, if you don't know what to do with your position, if you've got that pawn formation, if you've got a square in front of your king, just occupy it with your king, because then you control so many more squares. The black pieces can't enter your kind of territory if your king helps to provide support. So right now, looking good for Magnus Carlsen. Actually, I think that opening was perfect for Adhiban until he allowed these lines to...
Yeah, I just think that he couldn't handle the tension. He got a bit overexcited about the possibility of playing Magnus. And when he saw that active move, his hand just went for it. And it would have been a lot more challenging to keep the tension, to slowly improve the position, and just keep Magnus guessing, when is he going to go forward with that pawn? Because, to be honest, I didn't really see what Magnus was doing. Yeah,
I think he was just waiting and hoping that Adhiban would just lash out at the wrong moment. And maybe Magnus, he's just playing against Adhiban's style, because that is his style, to be creative, to initiate the play, to kind of initiate that, kind of drop that dynamite and just hope that things turn out in his favour. But here, for Adhiban, it looks like maybe just too soon. Too soon, and Magnus now back in control.
Yeah, and he plays the king move that we were talking about. And what can Adhiban do? So let's not be down in the dumps there. Let's think about how Adhiban can create maximum chaos or just make some improving moves. So one move that I thought about doing was maybe developing the light squared bishop and attacking the white knight.
Okay, so that white knight is defended twice, though, so maybe I can ignore that.
But by the king.
By the king. The king's a good defending piece. And, yeah, maybe that's a good move. Maybe that does create some kind of threat. Yeah, I think you're right. You have to develop some of Black's pieces somehow. But, yeah, it's a big question. Do you kind of start going on the attack? Do you offer a trade maybe of light squared bishops? A few tempting options here.
Because suddenly with that rather innocuous king move, you know, there's all sorts of possibilities in the air. Maybe you even have to be thinking and worrying about the idea of bishop taking the pawn. I don't, not necessarily now, but, you know...
The pawn in front of Black's king.
Exactly. And then that's followed by a rook check, and then the pieces all jump in together, and there's even, so many dynamic possibilities for Magnus.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why Adhiban finally, for the first real time in this game, he is going into a deep think. And I do feel this deep think, it would kind of belonged a few moves ago. It feels like Adhiban may be affected by some of his tough results this tournament. He hasn't quite got his rhythm going. Usually, before you make these committal decisions, especially before pawn breaks, before checks, captures, attacks, that kind of thing, that's where you spend your time deciding whether it's the right moment. And now, when it comes down to the manoeuvring, now he's spending his time when maybe it's a bit too late to put pressure on White's position. So, OK, lots of choice by Adhiban. We're expecting to see him maybe develop his light squared bishop. There's a few candidate squares, but
because he wants to get his rook out at some point, right? And it's kind of stuck right now.
Yeah, all of Black's pieces are a bit stuck, especially on that left side. And actually, the goal at the end of every opening, the goal is to connect the rooks, just to give them quick access to open lines later on.
And it looks like he's actually talking to himself. Like, does some players like to do that when, of course, playing online chess at home? To actually calculate out loud?
Some people do it even over the board.
Oh, really?
You can kind of hear them mumbling to themselves. I once played a grandmaster who was kind of talking to himself, and I kept leaning forward trying to listen in, but he wasn't quite loud enough for me to hear. But yeah, Adhiban, I think it's just motivational stuff. He's not. Maybe he's talking about variations as well, but maybe he's just saying, "Come on, I feel there's a good move here." Or, quicker. I don't know. Maybe it's just...
I must admit, I am a talker on online chess. Yeah. Cool. I like to kind of motivate myself, and also kind of, especially if you lose focus, it's good to take that kind of time and talk to yourself and say, right, bring yourself back to the game, bring yourself back to what you have to do, and just play. Because you're not allowed this liberty in over-the-board chess. And over-the-board chess, it's like complete silence, so you have to leave the room, and then I have to pace around and give myself a mental talking to. But I do enjoy that aspect too.
What kind of stuff would you normally say to yourself? Like, for example, in an online chess, you said you talk...
Well, it would be... It would only ever be on my opponent's time, but it would be kind of more or less the lungs. Like, if I feel like I've lost the drift of the position, I will tell myself, hey, you can do this. You know, let's see what you've got. This is a challenge. This is just pure enjoyment. Because, you know, if you save this, you're going to get such a buzz. So I give myself kind of like that kind of... Then when the position is kind of normal, I think about things like... general plans. My bishop is good, everything's good. Well, this is the bigger picture. And Adhiban has spoken to himself, he's had a chat with his pieces, and he's come up with moving his knight to the edge of the board.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Usually we don't approve of knights landing on the side of the board. It means that they have less scope, less squares to jump to later on. But this time, maybe it was just necessary because you do need to block the potential entry of White's rook onto this H-line, that corner line, eyeing up the Black king. So now if the White rook does shift across, we can say that, OK, the knight does keep things defended. It does block up that line. Maybe Magnus will be less tempted now. It's less attractive, at least, to bring the rook across. He still might do it. That rook not great for White, but... at least Adhiban, he's installed a defensive piece. He's keeping flexible with his light squared bishop. I think he'll develop that one next. What do you think, Ivanka? You like that move?
Yeah, I do like that move. It has a kind of sense to it. because, you know, once the white rook comes to the open line, well, it's looking at a knight. And at the same time, the knight can move forward. So I do quite like it. I mean, I didn't really see a great alternative. Let's be honest there.
Me neither. It cost Adhiban a lot of time, but it looks like a decent move from him.
And, well, it is the first round of today. We have 5 rounds to finish off the preliminaries today. This is round 11, and it looks like it's going to be quite an interesting round. So Levon Aronian on the bar, on the bottom of the screen here. Looks like he's really have a good situation going there against Alireza Firouzja, and that could be devastating for Firouzja. He's fighting right outside top 11. Vidit, maybe he's winning against Uyefan. That could bring him up in contention for top 8. Gukesh, is he about to beat the oldest player in the tournament, Svidler? That could also bring him into contention. And then Duda, looks like he maybe is about to win against Daniil Dubov, and that would be devastating for Dubov, who is fighting right outside top 8. All right.
Yeah, these players, they love to keep us entertained, right? There's so much action happening on the other boards as well. But, yeah, we will check in with those results as they come through. But meanwhile, there has been a couple of moves. As predicted, White did shift his rook across to the same line as the Black King, and Black reacted very sensibly by offering this trade of light-squared bishops. White's light-squared bishop was just too strong along that diagonal now. So, yeah, we will see those bishops leave the board at some point, maybe not immediately. Maybe White will want to allow that trade only on his own terms. But it's not easy to find another move for Magnus. I really like what Adhiban's done. Still not as... I mean, I don't like it as much as his position earlier, but I think he's made the best of a very difficult situation there.
So what would you play here as White? You kind of mentioned making the trade on his own terms, so that suggests putting pressure on that bishop.
Yeah, I mean, the move that I first saw was just dropping back, actually, White's dark square bishop, but just to attack Black's knight on the side of the board. But maybe the Black knight can just leap forward, and I'm not sure exactly what that achieves. So, yeah, it's kind of... White's pieces, they all make a lot of sense right now, but I don't see exactly how to improve them. So, yeah, I mean, Magnus, he's the master at manoeuvring, not me. But, yeah, I do think he will also struggle. That's why he's spending some time now. It's no easy move for White. Everything's pretty much perfect. Everything's defended. Everything's kind of covered. But, yeah,
Oh, well, there you go.
Your idea from earlier, Jovanka.
He amps up the pressure there, knight moving to the edge of the board. And suddenly there's a lot of pressure on that light-squared bishop. So, I mean, that's a great move, actually.
Yep. He's trying to force that trade. He's saying to Black, OK, if you don't move your light square bishop right now, the white knight's just going to capture it. I'm going to maintain my bishop pair, and you're going to be under heavy pressure on those long diagonals. So Adhiban, he doesn't trade those bishops. Not yet. He gives check to the white king.
But
I didn't even see that was possible, I must admit. But now Magnus has a choice. Do you trade that bishop off? Do you capture it? Or do you just block it with a pawn?
I would be tempted to block it.
Push a pawn forward, block that check.
Forward, block that check. And also, I also didn't see that possibility of giving a check. Instead, I was considering the queen moving forward and aligning herself with the rook. But now I think pushing the pawn forward, and I like the fact that it's defended by that white knight at the edge of the board.
And the white rook on the side.
And the white rook on the side. We like our overprotection, don't we, David?
Yeah. And actually, if you look at most of the light squares now, they are covered by white pieces. White's queen, again, doing a fantastic job on this long light square diagonal. If you look at the white rook in the corner, the white queen, they're both eyeing up, not immediately, but indirectly, the same pawn. And Adhiban moving the black king.
That is not the move you want to play, you know.
That's necessary. It's scary
exactly.
times.
It is a completely scary time because the position is wild, as it is so many open lines. And if the black king is moving toward the danger, then, OK, this is bad news. OK, so what can Magnus do then?
So Magnus...
the forcing moves.
Yeah, I mean, talking of forcing moves, I would want to create a threat. White's bishop not really doing too much right now, staring at a pawn.
Yeah, move it down, and it's been played.
Yeah. He retreats it. So Black's knight at the edge of the board, we said it was doing a defensive job, but it's really looking creaky now. It's only defended by a bishop. It's become a target now from White's bishop and White's rook on the side of the board. It's hanging by a thread now for Adhiban. His last... I mean, I said I like what he'd done, but the last couple of moves, Magnus really turning the screw here, really putting him under pressure. And, yeah, suddenly, how does Black react? Do you have to bring the queen out? I don't see any other options. It feels like Black's queen isn't taking part in the action.
Yeah, bring the queen in.
Bring the queen.
Whenever there's any doubt.
Line her up on this F line with the black rook. Protect the black knight at the same time. What else? I don't see any other moves.
Yeah, I mean, the queen is an amazing defender, so let's put her to work. She's not doing anything there where she is.
And that black rook in the corner is definitely not doing anything, so you need to create a way.
Yeah, we need to huddle the pieces all together on the right side of the board. So that's what I need, you know, once the queen comes in on the F line, then my black rook will step forward, and then my other black rook will come in, and then I'm going to have like 3 pieces.
If you could magically
I'll have a gathering there.
Yeah, they can all... Okay,
well, it might happen.
It might happen, it might happen. I mean, Magnus will have something to say about that. Black won't get 3 or 4 moves in a row, unfortunately. But, yeah, either way, I think that move was... Well, I was about to say I think it was necessary, but look at the bar. It's gone up to +5.
Whoa.
That means there must be something immediate.
Something there, OK. So, I mean, is it along the lines of... OK, well, Magnus has immediately captured the knight.
Yeah. And
that was so quick.
Look, the bar's dropped right back down again, so the computer didn't approve of that. So Magnus, he's going for the strategic route. This pawn push, he's just controlling squares for the white knight to jump towards the centre later on. But maybe this pawn push on the last turn was even stronger, aiming to push up and just trap that black knight on the side of the board. So I think Magnus coming up with the right idea, but the wrong order, the wrong execution. He could have inverted those moves, flipped them round, and I think he would have been winning pretty much immediately, Magnus. But he's found a good idea anyway. Now it's up to Adhiban to try and stop white getting his knights to great squares.
Well, he can do that by just moving his queen to look opposite the white king. So if you do that, then the knight cannot jump. Well, the knight can jump in, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think you cannot stop white's knight. Actually, let's bring up the analysis board while Adhiban thinks.
So a few moves kind of came to my mind. So
I just want to show, in this position, Magnus traded this knight and then pushed this pawn. But if he'd done it in a different order, if he'd pushed this pawn first, it was even stronger, because now there's an almost unstoppable threat of pushing forward and forking the queen and the knight. But Jovanka, you mentioned after Magnus went for this trade and then pushed a pawn.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was a little bit too optimistic. I was thinking, oh, well, the queen can come forward opposite the king, and then this stops the knight jump. But it doesn't, unfortunately, because the queen that is hiding all the way on the left, she defends her knight. So instead, that does lead me to...
It's still very tempting, actually, to play rook takes knight sacrifice to lure out the white queen and then go on the counter-attack with black and suddenly start threatening things. You've got ideas. Finally, this rook, earlier you mentioned Kaya doing nothing, sitting at home.
Yeah.
Finally, it's got a huge threat of coming across and attacking some things. Black's king looks open, white's king looks open. It's not clear who this favours, but at least Adhiban would be in the game. So maybe an idea.
Maybe an idea.
You mentioned another one.
Yeah, another one along the same kind of lines is just to explode open the position, go for it, and just push that pawn forward.
Yeah, this is very thematic in the King's Indian, the type of opening he's played.
And it's on the board.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason, is to try and undermine white's kind of strong point, protecting the white king. White now, for example, cannot take this pawn because there would be a deadly check and the white king is soon going to be in trouble. Instead, Magnus trying to block out this line. And, still very, very tense. Probably good for white, but anything can still happen. Adhiban trying his best to confuse Magnus Carlsen right now.
Wow. It feels he came to work today, Adhiban, with sort of the intention to just have some fun.
Yeah. He's definitely not showing too much respect, or, well, of course respect, but he's not showing too much fear to the world champion.
Yeah.
He's been trying to push forward, he's been trying to take his opportunities, and, OK, now the bishop dropping back. That bishop was under attack from white's knight and rook, so sensible move there.
Yeah, I think it was the only move, in fact, because the bishop, if it moved forward, it was in danger of getting trapped.
Yep.
So, and what's nice about this position for black is that if white were to capture the pawn in the middle, that's emprise, well, then black will simply centralise one of their rooks and then put pressure. And suddenly
Pawns don't matter here.
Exactly, it doesn't really matter. It's all about the pieces and who is attacking in the most harmonious way.
So if black gets one more move, we think we love black's position.
Yeah.
If he could just activate that rook in the corner, bring it towards the centre, then black is doing fantastically. But Magnus, he has a couple of moves now. a couple of moments to try and cut across that plan.
OK, so shall we have a look at what Magnus can play?
So, as we mentioned, pawn takes pawn is the most natural move, the most obvious move, but suddenly the black rook swings across, attacking this pawn with the rook and the knight right now. And white has won a pawn, but he's weakened his position. The king not feeling very safe anymore, feeling a bit drafty, lots of air around it. So maybe the best move for Magnus Carlsen is actually just to push this pawn forward, keep the lines blocked. Because now if the black rook swings across, it's blocked by its own pawn. And now, talking of rook swings, this one has been doing nothing for the last few moves. Now, imagine it's going to swing the whole way across the board. Using a bit of teamwork, it's going to stack up and line up against black's weak pawn over here. And, yeah, this looks very promising for white right now. There's another plan as well for white. If he does push this pawn forward, for example, if black swings across, to kind of use the knights as well. Rather than use the rooks as a team, use the knights as a team. And now these knights connected. But also, again, if black kind of forgets about the white knights, then... yeah, suddenly double attack, all the forks, all the attacks, and black's queen is, well, those two knights are doing all the work, basically.
The definition of a nightmare.
Yes. All right, we do see 2 games just finished, actually. Levon Aronian has gotten a win against Alvarez Borussia. That brings Levon to sole lead of the tournament, and it's a little bit crucial for Borussia. He was half a point away from qualification before the start of today. It's probably going to be a little bit further away after that loss. And then also Jan-Christoph Duda getting a win against Dubov. And that is great news for Duda. He was in 8th place when we started out. This will take him, you know, a little bit up on the table. And for Dubov, he was fighting right outside top 8. It's going to be hard now for him as well, but it's not over. And I also want to mention that we have some technical issues outside our control. All the player cameras actually are right now off. That's why what you're seeing here is a frozen picture of Magnus and Adhiban. Hopefully, the player cameras will come back to us soon. The great invention, internet, is not so great today.
Yeah. We're thankful for it, just for having these series of tournaments, though.
The chess is still working, and that is, of course, the most important. And we do see a move.
OK, wow, and Magnus, he didn't push that pawn forward as we predicted. He adds one more knight to the action. He brings his knight across. And Adhiban instantly reacting. He ignores what we thought was a threat. He ignores the fact that white's knight can jump forward and attack the black queen right now. There would have been an idea of black's queen, if it was attacked, to come down and try and swap off with white's queen, jumping into white's position. But instead, Magnus just takes a pawn. Are you surprised?
So quickly as well.
Bar doesn't like it.
I'm completely surprised because I would have thought that was the position to take a moment and go, hang on a second, got some options here. I can move my knight to attack the queen, or I can just take the pawn.
I think Magnus has missed one key move. Black needs to find this move, I think, now to equalise the game. And he finds it. He sacrifices his rook. He just gives up his rook for this pawn. And it looks like, wow, you're dropping a rook. But now, after white's queen recaptures, suddenly the queen no longer protects the white king along this line. And black's queen can use that to jump in, checking the white king and also attacking the white rook. Suddenly, Adhiban is completely fine. White is the one maybe who has to be a bit careful because of his king situation now.
But wait 1 second, David, because the adventure continues, doesn't it? Because the question is, how is white going to move their king? If you step it up, well, the black queen takes the rook with check. But if you step it back, I mean, what's to stop Adhiban from playing queen check?
Yep, he might give a queen check, but actually I think he's just going to take this. And, OK, the white king has stepped forward. Wow, that is brave by Magnus Carlsen, stepping into the action.
Gutsy move there.
OK, he doesn't continue stepping forward because this would have been met by a bishop check. Instead, he offers the trade of queens, Magnus. And actually, can Adhiban be greedy? Can he be ambitious? If he swaps queens, maybe he's safe. He should be able to make the draw there. But if he wants to win, maybe he can just get greedy and start snacking on some pawns. Is Magnus taking risks here?
He should just do it, David. What do you think?
I think, yeah.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot, right?
Adhiban's not going to qualify for the knockouts. He's only playing the world champ. I mean, you don't play the world champion every day, right?
Exactly.
Just take the pawn, go for the win. Try and snack on all the pawns.
Especially if you can't see that white has an immediate win. Because, you know, the line that you would have to calculate, if queen takes pawn, there's going to be a capture. There's going to be queen check. So, and there's no good captures, actually. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Knight can't move, it's pinned.
Yeah.
OK, so the only move is queen check. The king goes to the side, or even the king, the rook can come forward. Oh, is that it?
He's playing for the win, Adhiban.
We like it.
No safety first chess in this one. Adhiban playing the world champion and not showing any fear. He's a pawn up, And now the pressure's on Magnus. How is he going to justify that deficit? Also, look at the clocks. Adhiban ahead on the board and on the clock right now. Looking good for him. Magnus, it feels like with best play, he should be able to whip up some kind of attack against the Black King, but it won't be a winning attack. The best Magnus now can really hope for, I think, is to force some kind of draw.
OK. OK, let's look at what Magnus can play. So the first move that springs to mind is Queen check.
OK, so Magnus, we think he might bring his queen up the board, checking this Black King. So the Black King under pressure now. And actually, this apparently is a big mistake, Jovanka. Oh. Apparently, this is just winning for Black.
No way.
He just shuffles into the corner.
OK.
Because now it looks like White has some kind of winning checkmate idea.
Right, yeah.
Look at this. Pinning the White Queen cannot be captured. It looks like checkmate is threatened. White's Queen threatening to take his pawn, Rook threatening to take the pawn. Jovanka, guess the winning move for Black. It would be incredible if this happens and if Adhiban finds this.
And we do have his camera back on.
It's going to be Queen check.
Queen check.
Gives herself away. And after Rook takes Queen...
Giving up this Queen, the Rook can just capture it, and after it does, the Rook has been distracted. Now you take the White Queen. Not only do you get this favourable trade, but you win this knight. It's pinned.
David, it's on the board.
Wow, are we about to see this bomb unleashed by Adhiban? If Magnus now plays the most obvious move, the most tempting move, bringing his queen across, he will lose. Adhiban can find this queen sacrifice, as we just showed. If the queen comes across, sacrifice your queen, distract, deflect the White Rook. And now look at this. Stockfish confirms in the current position, Magnus, well, I mean, he's in trouble, he's losing, but he only has one move to really reduce the damage, to reduce the limit the damage, and that is actually just to retreat the queen, but that is not obvious.
That's never going to happen, David.
You don't go forward only to retreat the queen next move.
That's something, you have to swallow your pride to make that kind of move. No, the instinct, you're attacking, the instinct here is to go forward, so I would suggest that another move, the most natural for me, is to step forward with the queen. Mm-hmm.
Step forward here, attacking this bishop as well.
Exactly, threat and checkmate.
Yeah, but this...
It's on the board.
I think this is losing. Black can just give a lot of checks, all the checks. OK, he has done. Worst comes to worst. Now, you just drop your queen down one square and you actually protect your bishop. So you're just a clear pawn up for nothing. And this pawn, remember, any endgame is going to be winning for Black. This pawn is just going to run down the board.
OK.
I think Adhiban's going to win this game.
Wow.
And, OK, he's given another check on this square. This is still winning for Adhiban. He's just... He can take a draw anytime he wants. He can just continue checking the White King forever. But he has shown he wants to play for the win, and I think he's going to continue to do that right now. The move I would play, without even thinking, I would just step up, give another check, protect this bishop, make sure that the White Queen can never checkmate you. OK, he gives check on a different square.
On the light squares, the king moves back, and now is the time to take a deep breath and just go, you're OK, Adhiban. You do have that safety first move, which is just to put the queen on a dark square, protecting her bishop. And this is just good practice from Adhiban. He's going to repeat the position.
Yep.
Get those extra minutes on the clock, seconds on the clock. Yep. And now we're expecting queen to check on a dark square.
Yeah. And that's good from Adhiban. Like, as long as you don't repeat the position three times by accident and allow the draw, just there he goes. He defends his bishop and he gives check at the same time. Dual-purpose move. Just show your opponent who's boss. Show Magnus you're in control. Play for the win now. And Magnus, he's begging for the draw with these king retreats, these king manoeuvres. White's king can never hide from these checks, really. And I don't see any threats for White even. So
is he just going to walk his... I was just wondering whether he could just walk his pawn down.
It's tempting, right?
Yeah. The pawn I'm talking about is the pass pawn, the black pawn on the left side.
I think that was just a winning move, a winning plan.
Yeah.
And now it's much less easy if Magnus finds... I think, again, maybe he has to find this move. Magnus has to allow the queen trade, which isn't obvious at all, but he should just bring his rook across, attack the black queen, defend the white queen indirectly, and at least the white rook would get active. But that's not obvious. That endgame, the only one who can win is black still. And he does find it, Magnus.
And he finds it. You know, when Magnus needs to be accurate, he's able just to regain his composure and play those moves that are necessary.
Mm-hmm. So Magnus finding the best defence. Black is still in charge here. Black is still playing for the win, but it's much less easy. Black is now basically one move down than compared to what he could have been if he had just pushed his pawn on that A line. Black's pawn there on the A5 square. That is the potential winner for him. I'm not sure whether it's enough, though, to win the game. Black's a pawn up, and that pawn's very strong, a protected passed pawn, but right now Magnus trying to get active, trying to fight for his life.
Yeah.
Impressive, though, from Adhiban in general.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought after his opening that he'd been a little bit too committal, but then, you know, the world champion, he's human. He made some mistakes and some inaccuracies, and suddenly Adhiban was right back in it. And full credit to Adhiban for not just taking the draw and playing for the win.
Exactly, and not trusting the world champion's calculation. Not this last move he didn't go for the queen trade as I thought he might. Instead, he keeps the queens on the board. But now this position's actually arisen earlier, but with white's rook in the corner on a worse square. So now white's rook has improved itself. It's going to keep harassing the black queen. How's the black queen going to run away from the attack of this rook? The black queen, it has to stay on this long diagonal, protecting its bishop.
I mean, is this enough now for Magnus to save the draw?
It does look like Magnus is going to hold this one.
Because he's just going to carry on attacking the black queen.
Yeah, it feels like Adhiban maybe just missing that golden opportunity. He had that win in his grasp. He out-calculated the world champion, actually.
Yeah.
But, man, Magnus using all his defensive skills. He's the best defender in the world. He's the world champion for a reason. He very rarely loses. And there we see, OK, the position will repeat itself if Magnus now steps up his rook to continue harassing the black queen. And he does that. White is still the one fighting for the draw, but Adhiban...
I mean, can Adhiban try for more, for instance, go all the way back with the queen?
No, this will. If Magnus puts the rook up now one square, that will be the third time we've seen this position. So Magnus has the option to force a draw immediately now. But I think you're right, Yamanki. The only winning attempt was to bring the queen the whole way back, and there we go. The position repeats itself 3 times, and a dramatic draw.
It's over. What a dramatic and fun game between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and Adhiban, eventually ending up in a draw here.